Hey everyone, Rarity Dash here, and it's time for another reaction request. And today we're going to be taking a look at this video. It is Skeleton Stories Season 1, Episode 1, A Head for Murder. And this is on the FilmRise True Crime channel. So, yeah, definitely looks like we're doing a true crime video today. Which is cool. I do watch true crime on occasion. I mean, it's not something I watch all the time, but on occasion I do go down that lane. Because it can be pretty interesting. Yeah, there's just something, I mean, it's morbid, but there's some sort of pull to this kind of morbid stuff. And especially if it's like a very interesting case. Don't know what this is. It's a 49-minute video, so this is basically like full-on TV-length true crime. And yeah, I'm not going to read the description. Don't want any spoilers. Let's just dive in. Never heard of Skeleton Stories, but definitely intrigued. So let's go ahead and I didn't check my audio, so let me play it just to make sure it's actually capturing. And it isn't. Oh no, it is. Okay, good. Desktop audio is capturing. Okay. Max 480p. Sorry about the low quality. It's only 3 years ago, too, that it was uploaded. You would think it'd be better. Typical true crime disclaimers.
Look at his skull.
We realized it still had brain matter in it. It's obvious.
And this looks TV quality. Is this an actual TV show?
Suspected hoax turns into a crime beyond rational explanation.
As I was there alone in my laboratory, I literally got chills because it was one tiny cut mark after another. And I remember just being in disbelief, thinking, am I seeing what I'm seeing? Who could do this?
Can Dr. Beth Murray solve a homicide from just a skull? Then, when a ranch hand disappears, suspicion of murder hangs in the air.
I thought it was strange.
Kind of odd audio mix. Like the narrator seems kind of low, but the rest of the volume seems
Now it falls to Dr. Turhan
right
Mirai
line.
to literally piece together the fragments of a puzzle and prove how a young man died.
I don't know that anybody could be prepared or expect what we found there that day.
Skeleton Stories. (1996). Okay.
On the outskirts of a small Midwestern town, two boys head to an isolated lake for a day of fishing.
Look.
I'm gonna pause. I gotta make sure this is the right upload that I'm reacting to. No, it doesn't look like the requester actually gave me. Yeah, it doesn't look like the requester actually linked the video, and this seems to be the main upload, so we'll just stick with it, I guess.
But what begins as a day of fun is abruptly cut short by a grisly discovery. It's a human skull.
Look at it. Is it real? It looks real. Let's go.
Initially, police are skeptical of the boys' discovery.
At first, we thought that it possibly might have been a discarded skull from the school, which is on the other side of the lake, and the kids were just pulling a prank.
They soon see that it's anything but a prank.
We realized it still had brain matter in it. This isn't a prank. This is real.
Yeah.
Homicide detectives rush to the scene to look for additional remains.
That'd be kind of a crazy
Search
prank,
the
though,
surrounding
to actually
area.
do that.
They come up empty-handed.
In my 33 years of police work, this is the first case involving a skull by itself appearing from the waterways.
That is kind of
An isolated
like
lake, a human skull.
I don't know.
All signs point to
There's
fraud.
something kind of special about that. It's a
But
skull
first,
or things like
Detective
that.
Nugent needs to figure out who this skull belongs to.
I returned to the police department, started searching through our missing persons reports.
He finds 4 missing persons from the area.
Nice and
3
sweet.
men and 1 woman. Investigators then turn to the only expert they know who can help identify the remains. Forensic anthropologist, Dr. Beth Murray.
Each victim is a witness to their own death. I'm merely there to speak for this person who can't speak for themselves anymore.
Investigators deliver the skull to Dr. Murray's lab at the College of Mount St. Joseph in Ohio.
You never really know what's at stake when you start a case.
But Dr. Murray does know where to start, with a biological profile.
A biological profile is basically a description of who, scientifically, the individual is in question.
Though she has only the skull to work from, Dr. Murray is hopeful it will help her identify this unknown person.
If you get only one part of the body in a case, I would hope it's the skull. A skull
that
provides
makes sense.
critical information that can be used to assess the sex of the person and the ethnicity of the person.
That critical information can be learned by measuring the skull's key features.
There are a lot of landmarks on the skull from which we take measurements. The length of the skull, the breadth of the skull, the size of the eye orbits, the height and width of the nasal aperture, all of these landmarks are measured.
Then, she inputs these measurements into a computer program.
The individual measurements are compared to the skeletal measurements in a data bank of known individuals, and the result will be a probability of whether this person is male or female, whether this person has African American ancestry, European American ancestry, for example.
Within a day of receiving the skull, Dr. Murray makes her first conclusions.
The measurements suggested that the skull was that of a female and that she was very likely Caucasian.
Her findings mobilize the investigation.
This information she supplied us gave us some place to start.
Since only one person from the area is female, police focus the search around
Said that earlier, didn't they?
The missing person was a young woman named Tracy Stark, who was 21 years of age, who left for work one day, leaving her mother-in-law in charge of babysitting her child.
As police learn about Tracy, they uncover a heartbreaking story of abuse and neglect. Tracy never knew her real father, and her mother was committed to a mental facility during Tracy's adolescence.
Wow.
When Tracy was 14, her stepfather sexually abused her and was sent to prison.
Okay.
But Tracy was resilient, and by the time she turned...
And then she got
21,
murdered. Wow.
She was already getting her life on track. She started work at a local grocery store to help pay her way through college. She was also the proud mother of a beautiful 18-month-old daughter, Alicia, and lived with common-law husband, Rob Benton.
She was a beautiful young lady, a beautiful smile, kind of long, darkish hair, and she looked vibrant, and I mean, she just looked like a fun person to be around, full of life.
But then, on June 4th, 1996, Tracy disappeared. Rob's mother filed a missing persons report.
Where's Rob?
That at the time, her husband Rob told police Tracy had simply abandoned him and their daughter.
Yeah.
But now that a skull matching Tracy's biological profile has been found nearby, Detective Nugent suspects that there may be more to his story. He brings Rob in for further questioning.
He's definitely the person to start with, at least.
Tell me something.
During the course of this interview, I could read that he was being evasive and untruthful in our conversation.
Well,
His body language, his blood pressure, and
it's
his
only
heartbeat
8 minutes in.
increased, and his nervousness in the chair.
So we know it's going to be this
He
easy.
stuck with his story that she left and returned to where she was originally from, and left him and the baby.
She left behind an 18-month-old baby. That also is highly unusual If a woman is going to take off, she is going to take an 18-month-old baby.
And interviews with Tracy's friends reveal that Rob was not always the caring husband he seemed to be.
He had a very quick flashpoint. He did have a temper. He was very easy to set off.
Rob quickly emerges as a suspect in his wife's disappearance. But investigators still face many unanswered questions.
Although certain activity might seem suspicious or not natural, that doesn't give us a crime.
True.
We still didn't know who this person was. And that's where we again had to turn to Dr. Murray.
Oh, maybe, is it not even her? That'd be a twist.
They are now counting on Dr. Murray more than ever to tell them if this skull belongs to Tracy Stark.
Identified that it was
People are
a
often
Caucasian
identified
female.
by matching their teeth to dental records.
I mean, it could be someone older.
But that
like,
won't be
been
possible
missing
in
for
this
longer.
case.
Although it did have the
Except
brain
for two
matter,
wisdom
but
teeth.
been gone with it.
All the teeth are missing, which is
Okay.
odd.
Yeah, that's
Teeth
someone
fall
covering
out after
their
death,
tracks,
but
I would
the
think.
molars typically don't. The molars
Someone
on
who
top
knows
have
that
3 roots that hold them in
dental
pretty
records
tightly.
can do a lot.
But the molars are gone, and Dr. Murray notices something alarming about the missing teeth.
There's a lot of breakage of the bone here. You can
That's just
see
unpleasant.
just the fractured tip of a root. Teeth fall out all the time, but they don't leave their roots behind.
The broken roots suggest that the victim's teeth didn't naturally fall out after death.
Yeah.
Someone removed them by force.
I could actually see the plier bites from needle nose plier marks. It appeared the teeth were snapped out, in this kind of motion. And I'm turning this over in my lab and I'm thinking, I can't believe what I'm seeing.
And Dr. Murray thinks she knows why this was done.
It's commonly known that teeth are used in identification.
Yeah.
So that somebody was going to extreme lengths to disfigure this person so that they couldn't be identified.
Surprisingly, Dr. Murray discovers that 2 of the victim's teeth do remain.
And the only teeth that were still there were the wisdom teeth. They were unerupted.
Wisdom teeth typically erupt between the ages of 17 and 25. In some people, the teeth never emerge.
When that person was alive, when they were fleshed, those teeth would have been hidden underneath the gums. He or she only removed the teeth that they could see.
Can you do much with the wisdom teeth, though?
But the forced removal of teeth is only the beginning. As Dr. Murray examines the skull more closely, she discovers the killer has gone to even more extreme lengths to disguise the victim's identity.
As I was there alone in my laboratory and began turning this over, I literally got chills because it was one tiny cut mark after another. All types of tiny little insults, tiny little wounds to that skull. And I thought, am I seeing things?
The more Dr. Murray looks, the more marks she sees on the skull.
There are a lot
I
of marks.
couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was literally hundreds of tool marks. There's serrated blade marks where it looks like somebody drug a blade down the side of the skull, like in an attempt to deflesh it. This is just mutilation. This is just something bizarre. This is a person who is obsessed and is just clinically, methodically, painstakingly taking apart another human being.
If this is Tracy Stark, it appears her killer took her face apart, defleshing it, to make sure that no one would ever be able to identify her.
You just cringe. You can't believe with horror the type of crime that has been committed.
It just sickened me to think about the person that could do that to another person.
But despite the well-defined pattern of injuries and a clear biological profile, there is still no concrete evidence that this is Tracy's skull.
Okay.
Without a positive ID, the case can go no further.
I knew there was a lot at stake, that this wasn't a run-of-the-mill case. This was the most grisly case I had ever worked in my career.
Coming up, Dr. Murray hopes a DNA test will give her the positive ID she needs. But can she find the clean genetic material for the test?
Probably. Yeah, this was definitely on TV somewhere. It's got commercial breaks.
Forensic anthropologist Dr. Beth Murray is examining a skull found on the muddy banks of a lake. Police believe it may be all that's left of 21-year-old mother Tracy Stark, who police now suspect was murdered. And from what Dr. Murray has already discovered, it was a bizarre and chilling crime.
I was seeing evidence that somebody had painstakingly taken all of the flesh off of this skull, and I remember just being in disbelief, thinking, am I seeing what I'm seeing? Who could do this?
One person who police suspect could have done it is Tracy's own husband.
Does this guy really have it in him though? Like,
because there is still no proof positive.
yeah, that seems pretty hardcore. I don't really. I guess you never know.
Place. It's now up to Dr. Murray to give them that proof.
I could see the history of the dismemberment or the defleshing of this person who had a face, had a scalp, had hair. It just sickened me.
Though Dr. Beth Murray has been unable to determine if the skull in her
It does feel like we're kind of padding a little bit.
Tracy Stark, the mutilation is nothing short of shocking.
Like,
but she knows from experience that emotion has no place in the forensics lab.
So where
I
did she
try
get
to
the DNA
step
from?
back and say, yes, this was a person, but my job right now is to stay focused. Not get emotional, not get involved, not get teary-eyed. How would my tears help this person?
The only way she can help the victim now is by verifying her identity.
Yeah.
The killer has gone to great lengths to destroy all recognizable characteristics, including pulling out her teeth. But he made one critical mistake. 2 wisdom teeth escaped removal because
I guess they would have DNA in them.
lying hidden under the gums.
All teeth do.
I believe they were still there because the perpetrator didn't know that they were underneath the flesh.
And the teeth may contain the precious piece of information needed to ID the skull. DNA.
DNA can be obtained typically from basically the guts or the inside of a tooth. The pulp cavity of a tooth contains enough living organic tissue that would have cells that would contain DNA.
But even if Dr. Murray can obtain a DNA sample from the molars, it needs to be matched from a sample from one of Tracy's blood relatives. This time, luck is on Dr. Murray's side.
She did have a child, and from the child we could get blood in, we could compare it to the DNA within those teeth and hope for a match.
Detective Nugent came to the prosecutor's office, and we assisted him in getting a court order for a blood sample from the 18-month-old baby.
But the results from the first DNA test are disappointing.
When the DNA results came back from the lab, they were inconclusive because that skull had been in a lake environment with a lot of other small living organisms whose DNA can contaminate the specimen.
The lack of a positive DNA match is devastating to investigators.
The investigators and I were initially disappointed, obviously, in the DNA results. And I think that some of the detectives thought that this might be the end. What are we going to do?
Things are looking bleak, but Dr. Murray has one last trick up her sleeve.
Most people think of the skeleton as a static thing, but bone is alive.
Bones, like teeth, are living tissue. And living tissue is comprised of cells that contain DNA.
And I said, I think that we could get some core bone samples that might be able to give us some DNA, despite the lake water, some deep areas of thick, dense bone that may have been protected from the contamination.
The back of the skull, the thickest, densest part, offers the best hope of a clean DNA sample.
I take my drill, I put the surgical core on it, I core into it under sterile technique, take out the samples, put them in a sterile container, ship them off to the lab for DNA analysis.
As Dr. Murray anxiously awaits the results, police continue their investigation of their prime suspect, Rob Venton.
We found out that she had a bank account. Money had been taken out of her account after she was reported missing. And they came up with a photograph with Rob taking money out of an ATM.
So it really
machine.
is this guy. Wow.
Clues suggest that Rob Venton killed his wife. But Rob is sticking with his story that Tracy simply left town and investigators have little else to go on. If the DNA of the skull doesn't match, then the case will go cold.
When you hear how horrific it was, you hunger to solve the case. You have to have closure in such a horrific case.
2 months later, Dr. Murray's efforts bring police one step closer to the closure they need.
The DNA results concluded that this was, in fact, Tracy Stark.
Okay.
Test is conclusive. This
I
skull
mean, it'd be kind of
is
funny if it
Tracy.
wasn't.
Despite the killer's extreme efforts
If
to
we,
destroy all
20 minutes
traces
into
of the
this, we had no
victim's
idea who
identity,
this even was.
Dr. Murray has outwitted him. But even though she has confirmed that this skull belongs to Tracy, investigators still have no evidence against her husband. Their only hope is to get help from the most unlikely of sources, the suspected killer himself.
Okay.
Coming up, Dr. Murray's findings are put to the ultimate test when they are used to confront the suspected killer.
Maybe we were going to finally be able to put the pieces of Tracy Stark back together, literally.
And later, what could have happened to a farmhand with a hidden past?
Tommy would do anything for you. Great help for me around here. He was like a son to me.
When Skeleton Stories returns,
Are we doing another case? Like, there's not really much left to do on this one, it feels like.
Dr. Murray has proven that this skull is Tracy Stark's, and that it has been systematically defleshed. Her killer's futile attempt to hide her identity.
But that wasn't the end of the story.
Police are eager to confront their prime murder suspect, Tracy's common-law husband, Rob Venton. But before they can, they'll need to know every detail about what was done to Tracy Stark. They again turn to Dr. Murray.
It's my job to create a scenario of a sequence of events. Then law enforcement can take that sequence of events, presenting the suspect with the information.
Scrutinizing this grisly patchwork of wounds, Dr. Murray catalogs the cutting tools and the manner in which they were used.
There's at least 4 different tool mark classes here. A serrated blade, and then something like a large machete or a meat cleaver, and then a little tiny pocket knife size knife perhaps.
As soon as Dr. Murray completes the horrific forensic narrative, police are ready to confront suspect Rob Venton.
We made the joint decision, yes, pull him in, find out what he has to say.
Police immediately hit him with a barrage of damning details. Details that Rob thought only he could know.
We know this, this, and this. We know you pulled her teeth out with needle nose pliers. We know that you dragged a serrated blade down the skull and defleshed her. That's often enough to get somebody to kind of crumble, if you will.
At first, Rob refuses to budge. But as he's confronted blow by blow with Dr. Murray's findings, eventually he crumbles. A year after her disappearance, Rob Venton confesses to the brutal murder of his wife. The investigators are stunned as he recounts the grisly story of how he killed and defleshed his wife, Tracy. It's the first Friday night that Tracy has had off in 3 months, and she's decided to leave the baby with Rob's mother so she and Rob can have some fun alone together. They start the evening with some cards, a simple game of gin rummy. But things soon get out of hand.
I don't need to cheat to win at cards with you.
He stated that he and his wife Tracy got into a vocal argument.
Rob accuses Tracy of cheating.
Really?
The situation quickly escalates.
I thought that was just okay. I was hoping that was just for the dramatization. That's
to escape her husband's violent temper.
screw this guy.
He had a fillet knife in his hand and cut her throat. She started bleeding. He panicked, ran from the house.
Fatally wounded by the man who claims to love her, Tracy bleeds to death, most likely the result of a severed jugular, the primary vein that drains blood from the brain. She spends her last moments alone.
After a short period of time, he returned to the house, found her laying in the bathtub, dead. He started disassembling her, cutting her up in pieces.
Just immediately?
He told us how he defleshed her bones, how he carved her skull. It goes hand in hand with what Dr. Murray said as far as the blade striking the skull. He also told us how he extracted her teeth using needle nose
I don't even
pliers,
just see it from it.
which is consistent with what Dr. Murray told us.
He then puts her body parts in 2 large garbage bags. He buries them near the local sewage plant and disposes of the skull in the lake on the outskirts of town. With a confession secured using Dr. Murray's findings, Rob is charged with voluntary manslaughter and abuse of a corpse. He receives a 10 to 25-year sentence and is still in prison. His mother is currently raising his and Tracy's daughter.
The murder, the dismemberment.
They better
the
not
fact
let that guy
he
out of
used her
10
credit
years.
cards after he had done all this. He went
The
to
hell is
such
that?
extreme measures and treated with such callousness a woman that he loved and had a child with. I can't understand those sorts of things, so I don't try. I just don't even try.
Detective James Nugent and prosecutor Robin Piper are forever grateful to Dr. Murray for helping them solve this gruesome
That she
case.
cheated
The
at
information
cards?
Dr. Murray supplied us made the case.
Without Dr. Murray, we
screw all this.
wouldn't
What
have
the- who the
developed
hell was the jury
identity
on this?
of the victim. We wouldn't have developed the suspect. We wouldn't have closure.
I guess I'd like to think that if justice is served and if
It
I was
wasn't.
a part of that, then people can move on with their lives
I mean, I guess he's
as best they can.
They want.
Rob's mother buried Tracy's remains in a local cemetery. From time to time, Detective Nugent still visits her grave.
She had a rough life. This is my way of recognizing her, letting her know that someone does care about her.
Yeah. I don't.
Coming up, a remote chicken ranch is littered with hundreds of bones. Unless Dr.
He got
Murray
10
can
years,
determine
that's
which
not
ones
gonna be
belong
enough.
to a young ranch hand, a murder may go unsolved.
There were bones scattered all over the place, all kinds of beef rib bones and turkey bones, all of which had to be identified and analyzed. That was my job.
That's next on Skeleton Stories.
So it's really about identifying stuff through bones. So it's very literally skeleton stories. How long did this show run? I can't imagine very long. I think it kind of repetitive.
It's 5 a.m. on a western Nevada ranch. While stacking lumber, the ranch's caretakers find what looks to them like human bone, partially visible beneath the woodpile. Alarmed, they phone the ranch owner, Bob Hammett.
Came as a big shock. In disbelief, I thought, no, it's got to be cow bones, it's got to be coyote bones or something, human, no.
Hammett immediately summons the police. The ranch hands direct them to a stack of old lumber near the chicken coop. As the police pull logs off the stack, they discover part of a skull and a set of rib bones inside a torn flannel shirt. They also find a clump of red hair. Ranch owner Bob Hammett isn't skeptical any longer. In fact, he claims he knows whose body it is. A young red-haired laborer named Tommy Bledsoe, who came to work on the ranch 2 years earlier.
You know, I really miss Tommy. He was a sweetheart of a guy. He was a younger fella.
Tommy grew up in Texas, dreaming of becoming a pro rodeo star, until a back injury dashed his hopes. Since then, he drank too much and spent his share of nights behind bars. But things changed when he showed up looking for work on the Hammett Ranch.
Tommy I met, and he needed work. There was always stuff to do around here, you know, burning firewood or cutting firewood.
Tommy took to the work and to ranch owner Bob Hammett.
Tommy would do anything for you. He was great help for me around here. He was like a son to me.
But after a month, Tommy's new life took a tragic turn for the worse. His girlfriend of over 2 years was suddenly killed in a car accident.
Okay, yeah.
Her death sent Tommy into a deep depression.
Tommy got very, very despondent, withdrawn. Basically, his personality changed. He felt somewhat responsible for her death. As a result of that, he talked suicide.
Then, one morning, Tommy disappeared.
I thought it was strange that Tommy would just take off and leave. I thought it was strange because he should have said goodbye or tell us if he's coming back.
If this pile of bones is the last of Tommy Bledsoe, then Bob Hammett's lingering questions will be answered, and police can begin a real investigation. But is it?
Anytime we have human remains in skeletal form, that's when we contact Dr. Murad.
Police turn to Dr. Turhan Murad.
Bones do have a story to tell. I like to think that I can help tell the story from bones. That's what I do.
Dr. Bones? That's great.
Dr. Murad immediately heads to the Hammett Ranch. The property itself is over 10,000 acres of brush and wilderness. At its center are the run-down farm buildings where the remains were discovered.
We're lucky in this county. We have Dr. Murad right here, which gives us advantage of having him coming out to the scene.
I'd never been to a place like this before. It was very strange, almost surrealistic. I don't know that anybody can be prepared or expect what we found there that day.
For Dr. Murad, the first step to learning whether these remains are Tommy's is to sort and collect all the human bones at the scene. But as he surveys the ground, it becomes clear that this will be a tall order.
This is not what I thought I was getting into. There were bones scattered all over the place, and I don't mean just human bones. Human bones are what I do. It's what I'm there to help them with. But there were all kinds of beef rib bones,
it's a ranch,
turkey
so
bones, and just
I guess that's to
everything
be
lying around this
expected.
place, all of which had to be inventoried, identified, and analyzed before it was even picked up. And that was my job.
Bird bones are easily distinguished from human. They
Yeah,
are thin-walled and hollow,
guess so.
which makes them lighter and easier to keep airborne. But bones from mammals, like sheep and cows, require closer scrutiny.
Yeah.
Piece by piece, Dr. Murad
logical.
separates man from beast and identifies a growing stack of human bones.
There was a skull, and it wasn't complete. It was broken up. And in the fire pit itself, there were portions of a human vertebra that had been burned. So unbeknownst to whoever did it, they were cooking their meal over burned human bone. Bizarre. Okay, to say the least.
7 grueling hours later, Dr. Murad and investigators have collected more than 100 human bones and fragments. Now, he must rely on these bones to answer the 2 questions at the forefront of detectives' minds. Is this Tommy Bledsoe? And how did he die?
Yeah.
Because there was no flesh, the pathologist couldn't perform an autopsy. They wanted answers to both of those questions. Who might this be, and how might they have died?
To shed light on these mysteries, Dr. Murad brings the bones back to his laboratory, the Physical Anthropology Human Identification Lab at the California State University. Here, he can examine the bones more closely. One of the most accurate ways to verify whether this is or isn't Tommy is to compare Tommy's dental records with the placement of the teeth found in the skull. If they match, it's as good as a fingerprint. But in this case, there's one glaring challenge. Both the skull and the jaw are in pieces.
Yeah, that would definitely make it harder.
There were lots of fragments. The face essentially was missing. The mandible was broken. There were these fractures to the top of the head.
Without the skull in one piece, there is literally nothing to match the dental records to. Dr. Murad must put it back together. He'll first need to learn which of the hundreds of bone fragments lying before him belong to the skull. One set of clues that guides him is the unique paths made by veins on the inside of the skull, the meningeal arteries.
And you can see very subtly there's some grooves in there. Those are what are called from the meningeal arteries. Okay, the meningeal arteries are the coverings of the brain. By virtue of this kind of surface on that bone, I know that this is a cranial bone. It's not like from an arm or a leg or anything like that. This is from the skull.
Much like assembling a jigsaw puzzle piece by tiny piece, Dr. Murad painstakingly tries to put the skull back together.
So if I have a pretty good idea as to where this might fit, then I'm going to set it aside and I'm going to look for other fragments that I can identify. Once I have those identified, then I will try to literally fit them together, and if there is a good fit, then I will glue them together.
6 hours later, the skull is in one piece.
It was the forensic anthropologist that put that skull back together that it got to a forensic dentist that was then able to establish this was the victim.
The forensic dentist confirms that this was Tommy Bledsoe. But now they need Dr. Murad to answer a question with much graver consequences. How did Tommy die? And was he murdered?
There are 4 ways a person can die: homicide, suicide, natural causes, and accident.
Was there a crime here? Or was there a person that had just died, been thrown under a lumber pile, and we had no crime other than perhaps burying a body without a permit?
Coming up, Dr. Murad finds vital clues in the fragments of the young man's face.
In this case, the bones are talking to me. They're telling me things.
This one's a bit more mysterious than the first case, so I still don't even know. I mean, I would guess most likely he was probably murdered.
Thanks to the work of forensic anthropologist Dr. Jahan Murad, investigators have confirmed that a skeleton found on a remote Nevada chicken ranch was once Tommy Bledsoe, a farmhand who had disappeared 2 years prior.
Well, on a ranch, it could
Police
just be an
returned to
accident.
the crime scene to question ranch owner Bob.
They also did
Hammett,
say he was like
hoping he could
depressed,
provide
so.
clues to Tommy's death.
The detectives came to me after
Probably
they
not
talked with
natural
the
causes.
anthropologist
That's
and
the one
asked me
I'll roll
who
out.
had been on this ranch in this time period.
Hammett tells detectives of another man who worked on the ranch around the same time as Tommy. His name is Hubert Wilkins.
We introducing a
They were
suspect?
friends. They were very dissimilar. Tommy was a smaller individual. He was only
Now
about
it seemed
5'9",
more like murder.
maybe 150 pounds, thereabouts. A very outgoing person. On the other hand, Hubert was a very large individual, in excess of 6 foot, and extremely muscular. An introverted type, somewhat of a loner, had very few friends, and pretty much kept to himself.
When Tommy suddenly disappeared from the ranch in the summer of 1994, it was Hubert who claimed to know what happened.
And
Okay,
I
well,
asked
that's
where
definitely
Tommy
sus.
went. And he says, well, I think he went back to Arizona. And I said, he wouldn't have done that without coming and saying goodbye to me.
A few weeks later, Hubert took a cue from Tommy and vanished.
Yeah.
He wanted me to take him to town to do his laundry, or he just never came back. He was nowhere to be found. He just disappeared.
Definitely suspect.
Hubert's gone. In the wind, not to be seen again. We have Tommy, who 2 years after Hubert's disappearance was found underneath the woodpile. So there's a strong finger of suspicion pointed at Hubert.
Did Hubert Wilkins kill Tommy Bledsoe? Police now suspect he could have. But before they can move forward, they need one more key piece of information that only Dr. Murad can provide them. Was Tommy murdered? Even though the skull found under the woodpile was fractured, this doesn't necessarily point to a homicide.
It might have been an accident. I mean, for all we know, perhaps a wood structure fell down on him and he died as a result of the blunt force trauma from some cave-in of some type.
Before Dr. Murad can tell
thing is
him
definitely
he was
possible.
murdered, he must determine whether his skull fracture caused his death or occurred after he died, the result of scavenging animals or the weight of the woodpile. To answer the question of when Tommy's skull was damaged, Dr. Murad must examine the edges of the skull fragments themselves. On close inspection, he sees that the fractures are not crisp and even, but ragged and bent. This suggests that at the time of breaking, the bone was moist and pliable.
Bone responds differently after it's dried out than it
that
does when
makes
it's
sense.
fresh or green. Many of the fractures to this guy's face suggested that this was near the time of death. The bone was still fresh. It had a lot of organic material in it. It hadn't dried out.
In other words, whatever broke Tommy's skull broke it when he was alive. Next, Dr. Murad must determine if Tommy's injuries could have been fatal. To answer that question, he maps the fractures so he can decipher their severity.
There are fractures radiating, moving away from this area. I'm inclined to think that the major force was right here.
He concludes that a massive blow to the glabella, the midsection of the brow ridge, split Tommy's forehead, literally into pieces. The broken bone itself would not have killed him, but the shock to the brain underneath unquestionably would have.
This blow to his head was more than sufficient to have caused a cerebral hemorrhage and pressure on his brain to swell, and to have caused his death.
Now, he must make the final and most difficult determination. Are Tommy's fatal injuries proof of murder? Again, Dr. Murad turns to the fractured skull for answers.
In this case, the bones are talking to me. They're telling me things, and I enjoy listening. Here's his left zygomatic or cheekbone. That was fractured. There's a fracture coming down into his left eye. The mandible, when it was recovered, was fractured here. He was hit at least a couple of times. I can't tell you exactly how many times.
Yeah, and something collapsing onto it.
Probably two or more.
This pattern of multiple fractures is not at all consistent with a fall or an accidental impact to the head. Dr. Murad has finally found the evidence investigators are waiting for. Tommy Bledsoe suffered not just one single blow, but a number of successive blows that ultimately shattered his skull. He was almost certainly murdered.
This at one time was a young man. He laughed, had family, cried, was known by people. He was a person, and he didn't deserve to die this way.
The news galvanizes the investigators. The hunt for Hubert Wilkins begins. They track him down and learn that he is working at a donut shop in Gallup, New Mexico. Police decide that it's time to go pay Hubert a visit. Coming up, Hubert Wilkins goes toe-to-toe with Sheriff Reniff and Dr. Murad's findings.
And I says, Hubert, we both know that Tommy never left the property.
That's next, when Skeleton Stories continues.
Yeah. You know this guy's just sure at this point that he's gotten away with it.
Dr. Murad has provided police with detailed skeletal proof that Tommy Bledsoe was bludgeoned to death. Now, armed with Murad's findings, police prepare to confront their chief suspect, Hubert Wilkins, a drifter who once worked on the isolated ranch where Tommy's body was found. Investigators question Hubert Wilkins at the donut shop in New Mexico where he works.
Remember Tommy? You worked with him a couple of years ago. Can we talk you back in private?
We spoke to him at length for about 2 to 3 hours. He kept telling us how Tommy had left the property and had never come back, and that was the story that he was maintaining.
The detectives are convinced that Wilkins is lying. And thanks to Dr. Murad's findings, they are able to turn up the heat in the interview.
Having a pretty good idea of what happened forensically was vital, so that you know when a suspect is lying, you can call him on it. Then Sergeant Reniff hit him with the evidence and said, "We know you're lying. Here's what the physical evidence is."
Now, we found the bones over there, didn't we?
The investigators proceed to replay for Hubert the exact circumstances of Tommy Bledsoe's death, from the shattered forehead to the fractured cheekbone.
He's finding out the investigator knows more detail than I thought could ever be revealed.
You worked with Tommy Bledsoe. We found his bones this week.
And finally I told him, I says, "Hubert, we both know that Tommy never left the property. Do you want to continue the interview here, or do you want to go downtown and do it?"
The man kind of stopped, said, "Okay, well, here's what happened," and then gave the truth.
9 months after discovering a pile of human bones on Bob Hammett's ranch, Hubert Wilkins confesses to the murder of Tommy Bledsoe.
It all came together.
With Hubert's confession and Dr. Murad's findings, authorities can finally piece together the last few moments of Tommy's life. As Hubert tells it, he began his friendship with Tommy Bledsoe in 1991. Both men are ex-convicts and drifters. They get along well, until Tommy's girlfriend dies in a car crash in July of 1994. Tommy becomes depressed.
He was not the outgoing person that Hubert was used to. He basically was getting on his nerves.
One afternoon, Hubert decides
Not really
to head
fair
to Reno for a weekend on the town without Tommy.
The Reno rodeo was coming up. Hubert wanted to go to that rodeo, and Tommy wanted to go with him. I guess that's why they got in a fight.
Well, at this point, Tommy threatened to turn in Hubert, who was wanted on a parole violation.
Ah, there it is.
That was the straw that broke the back.
He just exploded, picked up the splitting maul and hit him, as he put it, between the running lights.
Hubert pounds Tommy's head with the blunt end of the maul. The blows are swift and ruthless. Their number and placement are precisely as Dr. Murad has described. One blow splits Tommy's cranium. Another cracks his face's frontal bone and eye socket. A third breaks apart his zygomatic arch, Tommy's cheekbone. By the end of the beating, Tommy is dead, and panic grips Hubert.
He kind of fell apart and didn't know what to do with the body. Initially, he hid the body in the bathtub in the trailer. That night, he went from place to place trying to figure out where to get rid of the body. And finally, he decided to
with the animal
put it
bones
next to the chicken coop and pile the lumber over it.
He sticks around for a few weeks until questions of Tommy's whereabouts subside. Then, he moves on. In March of 1997, Hubert Wilkins is extradited back to Nevada to face charges in the death of Tommy Bledsoe. Wilkins pleads guilty to voluntary manslaughter, but tries for the lightest sentence possible.
The defense was trying to say, well, it's just kind of one blow. I mean, it's just, it's just one of those things.
But Dr. Murad has the proof. The beating may have been unplanned, but it was brutal. Hubert didn't just kill Tommy, he battered him again and again.
We were able to say, no, we have multiple separate blows. Because of the forensics that were involved here, we were able to convince the judge for the upper term for the voluntary manslaughter, 11 years in the state's prison.
From the first hours of the investigation to the final sentencing, Murad's skill made the investigation and prosecution possible.
I feel like in this case,
without him, there would
that's
have
maybe a
been no
little more
justice
appropriate.
at all
I'd still
for
go for
Tommy
more.
Bledsoe.
They never put me on a
Sometimes
jury,
it
but
works out well, and other times it doesn't. Perpetrator was captured, the
in this case,
decedent was identified, and the family notified. So
especially if he did actually. I mean, that's just his word, though.
Without
He
the
threatened
physical
him,
evidence,
his
they would
parole
have
thing.
never gotten the confession. They would have never solved this particular crime.
Bones
that
have
is,
a
I mean,
story
legit
to tell.
reason
I
to go off on
get
someone.
a great deal of pleasure,
I guess,
out of interpreting what those
holding
bones
something
can
like that over
say.
you.
Sometimes it's very obvious.
Not a good excuse,
Other
but it's
times
better than
not
cheating
so
at
obvious.
cards.
It's a challenge to try to learn as much as I can about the person from the hard parts of their body.
Well, there we go. Oh, this was Discovery Health. So that's the answer. I was wondering what channel this was on. Discovery Health Channel. Which I don't even know if that still exists. But, yeah, I mean, that was pretty good. I do kind of wonder about the show. I mean, if the answer to all the cases is bones, I do worry about that getting repetitive. I mean, I guess there is a lot of different things about bones, and it can be about different bones. But typically with these true crime shows and the ones that are focused more on the forensic side of things, there are different answers to the mysteries, like a different clue that'll point towards the answer. But here it seems like, just because it's the premise of the show, it's always going to be a bone. But I don't know. But yeah, it was interesting. I do feel like maybe it was a bit padded to get that TV length, 49 minutes with commercials. But yeah, I mean, I guess you gotta expect that for this kind of thing. But yeah, well produced. I mean, this upload, I think at first I was a bit annoyed by the quality, but I got used to it. Hopefully you guys did as well, with the narrator being kind of low and the footage being 480p. But yeah, pretty good stuff. Not really much else to say though. Hope you guys enjoyed the reaction. Let me know if you did, and see you in the next one.